Hello, and welcome to another episode of Around the Verse, our weekly look at Star Citizen's ongoing development. I'm Sandy Gardner.
And I'm Forrest Steffen.
On this episode, we examine how the team is updating the game's legacy armor. These suits might look familiar, but upcoming changes not only bring them up to the current standards of our items, but also mean you'll be able to customize them in the future.
But before that, the development team has been issuing new builds to our group of Evocati testers to battle the critical bugs that are keeping it from the PTU. Let's check out what issues we tackled this week in Burndown.
Welcome back to Burndown, our weekly show dedicated to reviewing progress on issues blocking the release of Star Citizen Alpha 3.0. Last week, we were at 23 remaining must-fix issues to complete the polish and bugs for our next game loop of shopping, cargo, and commodity trading. This week, we solved several problems and encountered some new challenges with interactions and severe crashes in multiplayer. So let's see how this week went.
So what would be nice, Todd, I think, regardless of like how it works or how broken it is, if QA can make videos, and then if we don't have a build to review this week, at least review the videos. So we have a review, we do a review.
That's fine.
Okay.
I mean, to be honest, I would just get in with Evocati, Todd, and play with them.
Yeah, well that.
That's the latest build. That's pretty much going to be up to date today. That'll be a lot easier. And we
Well,
know
the
to
issue is that I need some of the stuff fixed so I can.
Yeah, Todd.
Like I was able to play it like on the internal shipping build on Friday, and there were still issues. So, like, I mean, I've geared up I've had those geared up. So.
No, it's fine, Todd. I think the point is we want to definitely have a review this week, like regardless of, just to see where we are, just so people can see it.
I guess the most infuriating issue we've had this week was we had one build where we couldn't use the afterburner. If we used the afterburner, the game crashed to desktop. And it's amazing how you don't even think about it. You get into your ship, you take off, and you press shift to take off, and you crash. And then you get back in game and you go and you take off and you press shift without thinking about it and you crash. So I then have to, next time you remove the key binding, but because of the way our builds work, you don't always keep the key bindings from load to load. So sometimes you get in again, you've forgotten to take off the key binding and you start flying and you just press it. You literally just do it without even thinking, completely on autopilot, which was quite an infuriating build to be using because it involved lots of crashes to desktop.
The second stage afterburners, what that's doing is it's allowing us to cut down on the travel times that we're having at the moment. So at the moment, people are quantum traveling to a planet, and the flight time down to the planet's surface, or just around a little bit further around to the next quantum travel marker, can be sort of 15-20 minutes, something like that. This also carries through to the rest of the game as well, where you're in open space and there isn't necessarily a quantum travel point in order for you to just jump to. You're going to need to traverse a large distance in a shorter amount of time. So what the second stage afterburners are doing is, beyond your current top speed, the design of this is that when you are traveling in a straight line, that your ship continues to ramp up its speed to a predetermined velocity, and you then continue on that straight line at a higher speed and a shorter travel time. When you come to manoeuvre or you adjust your throttle settings, then things slow back down to your regular travel speed. So this is something that only kicks in when you're already at your top throttle setting, and then the ship just kicks back in and takes you up to that faster speed.
Let's pick out those 1 or 2 or 3 bugs and say get those fixed first.
We should be able to do that right now. I know there are still some issues with cargo as a whole. Like I've seen a couple of them when you buy a certain type of commodity. I think there's one very, like if you buy a metal type of commodity, those cargo items then don't appear in your ship. So there's odd ones, but from what I'm seeing from the various juries that we already had pulled out, I think there's only about 3 or 4 left. Kiosk must be closed and reopened to see any changes taking effect. That's still open.
Can we have maybe Todd, me, you, and
Yeah.
QA guy after this, like go over that list?
Yeah, sure.
Just to find out like what are the biggest, whatever, 4 issues, and then see.
Well, my whole deal is let's get it functional, and then once it's all functional, let's go back over it and do all the polish in terms of making, obviously I know we've got a bunch of UI work to do, but we just go over that sort of stuff, and then we just polish all that kind of stuff as we go behind. But right now, if you just can't do something, that's the first thing to fix, and then we should go behind it and then just basically get the UI for that stuff working well.
Todd, where do you want George to go?
So, well, George and I spoke about this earlier. What we're going to be doing is basically going from LSR to Grim Hex. We're going to buy commodities and then take them over there and sell them. And if we make good time and get through all of the things that we need to review, then we'll go from Grim Hex to Levski. But we should get all of it worked out right here. Okay, so real quick, for this to get back on track, so obviously there's the icon, there is the scrolling of the big bar, and then
What just happened there? Oh, is this you filtering? This is filtering, right?
But if you're scroll.
So basically, you actually have to have it scrolled all the way up to the top in order, and then once you actually go through and use the filter, then it works properly. So the other thing is with the filter bar, you don't know that there is anything actually below, Vice right now. But if George goes into go back into the filter bar. Scroll down.
Well, how do I even know that's a filter bar?
Well,
I think it says filter.
It says filter.
Where,
So if you go
where
up
does
to
it say filter?
If I haven't it set to none, it says filter.
Yeah.
Does? Where?
It did originally.
Says none.
Yeah, but it said originally filter and filters.
Yeah. The other major issue right now is this bar, and being able to actually use that bar. And if George actually clicked, go ahead and, it's a bug, but basically if he wanted to go through and sell something, he'll actually click on, min, and then all of a sudden it will come in, and then it will actually start being able to be used. But it's super finicky. If he actually clicks on the number, so 156, like if you wanted to go through and sell a very specific amount, it's a bug. It basically locks you into place.
Well, click on it. What happens?
I think
when
actually
If I click on
that
it, it'll
bug. I think
lock me
that bug
straight
just
in
got
place.
resolved, Todd, earlier.
So,
Fantastic. Okay,
I don't
that's good.
particularly want to click it, so I'll have to
So
restart.
I mean that sounds like we should do this sounds like if it would work as it's supposed to work, we would be happy with this thing, kinda, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So it's just bugs. So let's.
We are getting to the point where we are trying to finish this stuff out. So in my mind, it's going to be these little things that actually finish it out, make it more polished, and actually work the way that it was designed to work.
We've seen buying and selling in one location. We've actually transported the cargo to another location, buying and selling. What else do you want to show?
Those were the main things, and in particular, it goes back to the refresh icons, the bar down on the right-hand side, the scroll filter bar, the scroll main area, and then using the filter, that bug, and then as soon as you use the filter, not saying that's filters anymore. There are the minor issues with the blur. Hold on a second. Minor issues with the blur, upper right image area, which is basically the big blank one. The overall prices, the quantity pass, and the actual look at the different boxes. So those are the things that I feel need to be done. We've got 6 that I feel need to be done, and then the other ones are minor issues.
Yesterday we had a review of the commodity shopping section, which went really well. That's come on quite a long way. We've still got some bugs that were highlighted during the playthrough yesterday. So we've had those all bugged up by QA. Some of them were pre-existing, other ones have been highlighted during the review. And so now we're in the process of prioritizing those with the teams, and they can start working through that.
So during the playthrough test of the commodities kiosk, we actually found an issue with the drop down and the grid underneath. It was not actually losing focus when we would select the drop down, so it would actually scroll both of them. What we're doing right now is fixing the issue where when you select the drop down, it actually gains focus and it removes the focus away from the grid, so this situation doesn't happen again.
Commodity systems, obviously it's buying cargo, taking it from A to B, then selling it. So there's obviously various different stages to this. First thing you do is we've got little commodities kiosks in game, so you go and you buy your cargo through that, and then it appears on your ship. Hopefully, most of the time it does. Then obviously you take your ship elsewhere and sell that cargo. Now, we've still got a few issues with it. It is mostly working to a state where you can actually do everything and buy everything. There's nothing which really blocks testing of it or the gameplay to do with it. So, but there's a whole range of different things which we've been testing on that as well. So, obviously, there's various different ships with different cargo holds. And they've all got to be able to have cargo in it. They've got to be able to put the different types of cargo in it, which all have different boxes. There's also different size boxes depending on how much cargo you're buying. So there's smaller boxes and bigger boxes for each of them. Did that the wrong way around. And so we've been going through testing all the ships with all the different bits and pieces of cargo to try and pull out any issues there, as well as general issues with the UI. When you're buying and selling cargo, obviously you've got the UI elements which you're buying all that through, and there's still various little issues with that, some graphical issues, just some quality of life issues as well with that. But however, it is all working to the point where you can buy cargo, you can get it into any of the cargo ships actually, then take it to somewhere else and sell that cargo for hopefully a profit.
There's a detrimental issue with this build running, like interactions not working. Are we going to deploy the build that we've signed off on now?
What I'd like,
or are we going to do another build?
What I'd like to do is to get a coder to just, like Derek was saying, quickly check it now, quickly. And if there is a problem there, then we would want it fixed, and then we'd kick off a new build for the new fix. But we wouldn't wait. Then we don't have to wait 2 hours to get a new build.
Yeah. If the coder says that we have to get a QATR because he's really unsure, then they can communicate that with you. So I think that's what Chad needs to do if Chad is the person investigating, because it's with him now.
So you want him get latest from Perforce,
Yep.
start the build, see if interactions work, and if they work, we just kick off another build.
Well,
we
just keep this build going.
Yeah.
If it's really broken, then obviously we fix it, and once it's fixed,
Then we kill this build and kick another one. Yeah.
Yep.
Otherwise, we're going to wait. That's not. We're going to wait.
I can talk.
We're going to wait. We're going to wait 2.5 hours. Otherwise, to see
if
if
it's something
something.
that is genuinely broken, it is something that obviously is being submitted today.
Yeah, between builds
in the EU. So it's just if Chad can sort of look at. I don't know who's still because I've been stuck in meetings. I don't know.
Can someone paste the Jira in that link, please?
I don't know. Well, Chad said in the engineer update that he'd finished up the work on the interactions on skins and stuff, and I don't know, maybe something with that.
So I just got done finishing getting skins working with interactions, and this was necessary so that we could get shopping working with armor and clothing. The interaction system wasn't able to work previously with skinned assets because skins, which are assets that we attach onto the players, don't have any physics that are associated with them. So the interaction system uses raycasts to find physical entities and then uses that to figure out what the player is looking at or what's nearby. However, for these particular assets, the raycast would always fail and there would be no result. So you were never able to, using the new interaction system, interact with skinned entities. However, I've added a way that the skinned items that have interaction points can actually register foreign data onto the host entity which will allow them to be found by the interaction raycast, so that now you can interact with the interaction points that are on the skinned entities. This is going to be useful for shopping, but it allows us actually to do more things moving forward. So now we'll be able to have other characters interact with those skinned entities for other reasons, maybe like stealing, or you could comment on what somebody else is wearing. But also, it's also another step towards getting these skinned entities working as standalone entities, so that maybe you could drop, say, some armor on the ground and pick it up, or drop your boots and pick them up.
So we'll need to figure out this ASOP terminal issue and where that's come from. That's the, I think that's that's the absolute biggest one.
What fixes do we have from the issues that came in last night in terms of the fact that we have all these crashes which we're not getting the proper call stats from? Did we manage to find any? Did our internal QA guys here find some stuff? Did we get some of the recreations to dev here so we can fix some of this stuff up? What I'm saying is, if we do another build, if we send in another build tonight, what's going to be better about it than what we had yesterday?
If we send in a build from like a new one that we kick off after this ASOP terminal's fixed, we should see more, all being well, more stability in there.
The star map fixed.
Yeah, the star map missing its assets are fixed as well, so that's a good. That's
also,
big
the PMA is missing assets.
I know that's just gone over to the guys now.
Cool.
Alright,
that one's less of an issue right now.
What it's missing assets? It's like what exactly is missing?
The personal manager app.
Yeah, but what's missing?
The character model doesn't appear.
Players won't get stuck in the bed anymore either, which was happening quite frequently from what I heard.
That was fixed today.
Okay,
so
so
we need to build for
it
that.
basically sounds like we need to fix this issue, rebuild, and then get another one into Avocati with this issue fixed.
So this bug I was given when a character died in Levski, they'd respawn in the beds, but actually respawn underneath the bed and kind of clip through the wall, causing the place to get stuck. What I did was, I opened up the cry file, I looked at what assets were involved, so it would be this kind of pod. I looked at the positioning of nodes, and I found that this node here, which would start the animation, was actually placed off to the side, like so. All I basically did was a simple fix, just moved it back in the middle of this pod, reset the XFOM so it's local to the world. Made sure the hierarchy here was all perfectly fine. Tested it in engine and yep. Just start the animation, it's in the right position. Guy gets into the bed fine and no clipping through the walls or underneath the bed. Yep. So that's basically it. It was a simple fix.
After much strife, the list of ship item ports in the ship item kiosk is now being populated properly, including all the holes. Finally, I think there was a little bit of miscommunication or misunderstanding between some stuff Chad and I were talking about. So the hard part was easier than I thought when I did that. So pending whatever we talked about with Simon in the UI sync, hopefully right after this, about how we're going to be getting this data to the UI, might be able to be in review today, or potentially even submitted. But it depends on what comes out of that conversation. Okay. So closing in, it's working, just gotta clean it up and do a couple other things.
The build that dropped today, we're having, the biggest thing that affects us is ASOP terminals are unable to spawn ships, and assets are missing from Star Map and PMA.
The ASOP terminal issue may be build related, because I saw this morning when I got the build, but I synced to libs from the same change list, and now I'm suddenly able to spawn them.
Good to know.
I also saw that this morning, but only in single player. In multiplayer, I could spawn ships with it.
The other issue that has literally just got opened again, this Airlock Bug. This one is weird. So it was broken on the build that QA had yesterday. It was working on the build that QA had this morning. And now it isn't again on the build that was kicked off at lunch. And I don't know why.
So we just found out that airlocks aren't opening in release builds right now. This is a blocking bug because this means that the natural flow of gameplay can't traverse beyond just your spawning point. The original kind of indication is possibly that it's a problem with the interaction system, that the interaction prompts aren't being given to you to actually open the airlock. However, other doors and interactions are working. So this indicates that it's probably more of a problem specifically with airlocks or doors not working. Unfortunately, this being a release build bug makes it much more difficult to solve. And these are the ones that can take a long time because all of the tools that we have available to us are kind of taken away whenever we are trying to look into them. So I have a few guesses about what could have gone wrong. There has been some changes to both doors and interactions relatively recently. So there's some opportunities to look at this code and see if potentially it's contributing to the issue. But again, it being a shipping bug makes it difficult and confusing as to why it only happens in this case and not during development.
Like I said, the three bugs that we need to get fixed are the two ones about the shops and the airlocks. After those are fixed, assuming we get fixes in for those, we go for a release build and we aim to push that one up to Ivacati. Jake, I'll leave it in your hands, and AIDS obviously, to make a call on whether you try and get hold of Chris, Erin, whoever, to try and make a call for Ivacati later tonight if we don't get fixes in time to kick a build for this Airlocks one, because if that's the case, we'll have to use the build that QA here had this morning, but that means we don't get the shops. So, like I said, I spoke to Chris.
Can you call from them right now before they leave? Like, I mean, I feel like we can make that call now. Like, if are they comfortable with going to Ivacati without shopping?
I can ask
PU gameplay review, right, Jake?
I was going to say I can ask Chris in a little bit.
Yeah.
Chris is going at 7. He's on a train, so he'll probably be leaving at about, I don't know, 2 minutes to 7 from this office, and then miss his train.
Well, probably because they'll have items, won't they? And we want to test our optimizations to see if the game's performing better.
Yeah, I mean that's the other thing, that we do still have the ability to get out and explore. We've got all the various bits and pieces of optimization.
Yeah, that's right.
They're just missing those items
so
and anything.
it's not going to be long term.
Okay.
That's the fallback. It would be nice to fix it. But
yes. Okay. There you go.
Now, we did make lots of progress on several blocking issues, as well as tackled new issues that cropped up. Like Chad mentioned, we fixed the broken interactions across the entire game, doors not opening up, and that multiplayer crash. We also had an in-depth review of the shopping, commodity, and cargo game loop, where we got to see a lot of great progress. But it did uncover several new unplanned issues that we've added to the list. So at the time of filming this, we're at 25 issues, which breaks down into 4 blockers, 14 criticals, 5 highs, and 2 moderates. Now, we've also made over 551 updates across all kinds of aspects of the 3.0 build, such as second stage afterburner, improving traversal, and continued optimizations and improved stability in a large multiplayer environment, moving us ever closer to live release. Now, we're completing work as quickly as possible, so come back next week to see how much we've done here on Burndown.
As always, you'll be able to dig into the details of this week's work by checking out our production schedule report, which you can find on our website.
Those that have played a round of Star Marine will be familiar with the Marine and Outlaw armor that players wear. Currently, there are 2 options, light or medium armor, that players have used and loved.
Yeah, but these legacy armors were essentially one solid mesh. With new customization system, players will be able to mix and match different pieces to personalize the look and performance of their armor.
To learn more about what's being done, let's check out part 1 of this feature on legacy armor.
So as we've been focusing more on character tech and character customization and character modularity, we've been focusing on all the different armor sets that we've been working on. One of the things that we ran into as we were doing this was all of our legacy armor sets. Legacy basically means something that's been around for a really long time. So we're kind of looking at the light, medium, and heavy of the Marines and light, medium, heavy of the Outlaws or Pirates as something that was eventually going to have to be addressed. As we were making headway on the character customization front with doing, arms and helmets and cores and legs and undersuits and kind of really building this whole customization system so that the players can customize their character, we realized that the older legacy sets were not really built with that in mind. So we knew that eventually we were going to have to address that issue, and the way that we're going to address that is by rebuilding them. So what it was that wasn't working for the legacy armors was that they weren't built into all those pieces. They were essentially one solid mesh, and even when you were able to select the character or buy the armor, you could only buy the whole set at one time. You were not able to buy a helmet, you were not able to buy any of the individual pieces. It was just kind of a whole thing. But as we've been saying, we want the players to be able to really customize their armor, be able to customize their space suits, be able to customize as much as they can about their character. We really wanted to focus on that, and the legacy armors really just didn't fit that at all. So we played around with a couple options. We played around with maybe just being able to save the helmets, because the helmets were actually a separate mesh, separate material. So we would be able to save them and use that as an existing item. But then we would still have to figure out or possibly rework the whole rest of the body. That wasn't really something we wanted to do, because even though the mesh was working for the helmets, it wasn't even using the correct shaders. So they weren't optimized. So one of the things, when we get really heavy into talking to customization and characters and stuff like that, really any game asset is draw calls. A draw call is essentially how much something costs to render, and the older style uses a different type of maps, which me and Forrest have talked about before, different materials and different shaders. But the new ones use something called the layer blend, and the layer blend is now working on all of our materials except for the legacy ones. So if we kept the helmets, they would still be using old materials and old technology, which is still kind of a problem. They wouldn't be optimized, they wouldn't be working. So rather than fight against trying to keep something that realistically doesn't work as well as it could, we decided to just kind of start from scratch on them. We want to be clear to keep the original designs and intent and even the names as close as possible. But we're starting from scratch so that each one of them will have their own chest piece, arm piece, legs piece, and head piece. So you'll eventually be able to, as where you weren't able to before, customize. Let's say you like all the legacy Marines. Let's say you liked the heavy chest piece and the light helmet and the medium arms and so forth. Now you'll be able to combine those and create your own legacy Marine set, which is completely unique to you.
I think the hardest thing to do in concept when designing something that requires different manufacturers put together and not making it look ragtag and messy. The biggest problem that I've encountered doing that was the lines on the costume have to make sense, but it can't be so chaotic where it's so messy to look at. So I had to find a fine line between, okay, I have to make things look like this person or this outlaw picked a shoulder pad from here and then maybe a chest piece from here and a helmet from here, but then still make sure the lines of the character and the costume still made sense and was aesthetically pleasing. And so that's the hardest part, I think, for mishmashing different types of manufacturers. So I guess we get around that hurdle by lines on the costume. I think that's the biggest key. We can still make it look like a bunch of things were put together randomly, but we can strategically place lines on the character and also the breakups and where the materials fall on the character, so it looks aesthetically pleasing and yet still look like it was kind of like scavenged together and put together.
So let's talk about the Legacy Outlaws first. The Legacy Outlaws are super fun. I think that there's a lot of really cool design elements to them, but we definitely want to spice them all up. Right now we're working on the Legacy Light, Medium, and Heavy, and all three of them are in different phases of production. So our Legacy Light, we recently posted in our sneak peeks the concept art for that. And some of the stuff we're trying to keep in mind with the Legacy light armor is the most iconic thing to me is his helmet. So he has this kind of, there's like an understructure to his helmet, and then on top of that is like this glass dome. And then in the glass dome, there's like a red 2 red circles that are like HUDs that you kind of see. So that's the main iconic piece that we want to keep for each of, for that armor. And we're trying to do that with all of our armors, really. We're looking at each one of them and saying, what's the most iconic element to this armor? What's the thing that we really like, that they really get attached to? You know, if I step back 200 feet and look at this armor, what's the thing that I see that I can really pick out? And that, for me, is the most iconic piece of the light. So right now we're in high poly with that, and it's moving along really well. We're also designing a separate undersuit for this armor, and this is actually going to work as our general kind of legacy Outlaw undersuit. So we'll be able to use this with any of our undersuits and with any of our armors, not just the legacy ones, not just the marine ones, but any of our upcoming armors as well.
I've been working with Jeremiah. He did a gorgeous concept, and I've kind of gone back and forth with him and Josh too on changes, alterations to the model so that all the pieces become modular with our new system so that players can swap items out in the future, and making it a functional thing. But the real idea of it is that we, kind of pay homage to the Outlaw light that's been in the game for a long time, but really needs an update so that it's consistent with, the current characters that we're producing, right? Because we don't want there to be a quality drop-off, but we also realize we can't give these guys a hook because people like them. They're cool characters and they've been in the game forever, and they are kind of a shout out to people who have been with Star Citizen since, its formidable days. We're trying to design something new that also recalls the designs of the past, which is kind of challenging. And Jeremiah's, he's Jeremiah. He's awesome on that stuff. He is easy to work with on that stuff. And in the process of fleshing out the high poly sculpt, I'm trying to keep it real detailed. And this should be one of the lightest light armors that we've got in the game, I think. The helmet is probably one of the tightest full helmets that actually covers part of the face, which is hard to do in conjunction with animation and mocap because since we're using actual head scans of actual actors, everybody's face is different, so that can you have to account for that. But that being said, it's a really tight fitting helmet. It's kind of menacing looking and kind of has this skull-like feel to it, which is something we've tried to retain from the original designs, like a cobbled together machined skull underneath like a visor. And then same thing with the armor. It's also probably one of the light armors that we have in the game. I think we were really trying to introduce the idea of like a mixed media look in some of the armors, like not just metals and carbon fibers, but also like fabrics, possibly like leathers, knits and weaves and stuff like that. There's possibly going to be some cloth sim on this character. So it should be pretty cool when it's all said and done. Those are all things that I like about it, and I liked about the original concept.
So the undersuit is basically something that you have to equip to go into EVA. EVA means you are able to go into space, that you are vacuum sealed. And basically all it is it's a jumpsuit that has boots and gloves, and then it kind of goes up to your neck. And the theory is that all you would have to do is just pop on a helmet, and then you'd be able to go take a spacewalk. And all of our undersuits are compatible with any armor. So whenever we're adding a new undersuit, you are actually able to put any of the armors, the Explorer armor on it, the Marine armor, anything like that, the Slaver armor, you can put all that on the new stuff as well, which is part of the really fun thing about a customization system is that anytime we add one element to it, it's actually adding a multitude of combinations because you can create all the old ones and put that on top of the new ones and vice versa. So we're super excited about anytime we can do a new undersuit and anytime we can do a new armor because it creates a lot of new options for the players.
The previous armors we had for the pirates at the time, or Outlaw, didn't have an undersuit underneath. And so those assets were created pre, I guess, current pipeline we had. So right now, if you want to wear armor, you're required to wear an undersuit to go with, this is the current pipeline that we have for our characters, unless you're wearing just regular clothing, but that's a whole different topic. But the Outlaws had to go through that same process. And the concept that I did for the Light Outlaw had a really in my opinion, really sweet looking undersuit underneath, which didn't exist. And so I remember the character artist was looking at me and was like, "What is this?" And I was like, "Oh, that's a new undersuit." And so I was tasked immediately to design an undersuit that would go on, that would go underneath all these armors. That obviously, you, the player, can swap the undersuit and just wear whatever you want. But we wanted like this undersuit would look best with this look. So I had to go in, and I was looking at a lot of the undersuits that we had. And like the Explorer suit and the UEE Navy undersuit, and I was starting to notice that things started to look the same. There's literally like the lines would be different, and so I thought, you know, if these are Outlaws, we should make them different. And so I took a different approach to the Outlaw undersuit and made it more badass.
The biggest challenge on this guy is trying to keep in mind that aesthetically, I think that this armor looks cool with smaller proportions, like a little tighter. We've got a lot of characters that have bulky to really bulky armored suits for like a heavy combat look, and I thought the idea of having light armor that would make a character look like athletic and agile would be really cool. So, but trying to keep that light aesthetic while still functionally adhering to the volumes and you know, animation guidelines and all these other things. You know, where the joints and the skeletons get put into the character when it's rigged and etc. Trying to make sure that art meets function in an appealing way is probably the biggest challenge, especially in the face, because this mask is very skull-like. It has recessed, you know, sections in and around the cheeks. So trying to keep things looking recessed and kind of skeletal or scary is kind of tough when you're also trying to make it a certain size, you know. So that's probably been the biggest challenge on this piece.
So after the light Outlaw, we're moving on to the medium Outlaw. The medium Outlaw also had some really iconic elements to it. Specifically, I think generally the shapes of this one were much stronger than the light. The helmet is super interesting as well, so that's something that we're trying to keep. I think all of the helmet designs we've had are pretty solid in the past, so that's something we really wanted to keep in mind with the Legacy medium. The Legacy medium is also in high poly phase right now, so eventually when we're done with that, we'll be moving on to game asset and texturing and so forth.
Because this Legacy armor is an older armor set, he would have to take cues from the new one and also take it back a couple years in tech. So going through those shapes, we added more of like a bulkier look. As you've noticed in technology today, if there's a new innovation, they tend to be big, right? And as time passes, they optimize and things get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And so it was really a team effort. It was kind of the team as a whole were kind of jumping in, jumping out, doing feedback with each other to find the shape that we thought was pretty successful in my opinion.
The one I'm most excited to show you guys today is actually our Heavy Outlaw. I think the Heavy Outlaw is probably one of our more iconic armors just in general that we've had in the game for a long time. He's always a little bigger, a little heavier, has a really iconic helmet, and I think players have grown really attached to him. So this design is actually more of a redesign of kind of from top to bottom. We have a lot of elements that we really wanted to keep in mind with this guy because he is so iconic, but those icons are so strong that it's not hard to redesign around them. His helmet and just overall kind of bulk and size are really simple, easy silhouettes to follow, simple shape languages to follow.
So one of our character concept artists here in Los Angeles designed the Heavy Outlaw. So Josh and I kind of said, you know what, go nuts with it. And but also tell us what your process, what your idea was. And so the thing that Michael told me was, before jumping in on it, that he noticed a lot of football padding type of shapes on the Slugger armor, and he wanted to maintain those shapes but not make it just football padding. And so he looked into actually some samurai references to make things a little bit more spontaneous, a little bit more interesting. So there is a little bit of that. And also, the Slugger armor didn't look techy. It didn't look current in the Star Citizen lore. the slugger armor looked like an armor you might see in post-apocalyptic times of today, right? Maybe something 10 years from now or 5 years from now. It didn't look like something that would be current in the lore of our game. So Michael ran with it, added some new tech onto it, but still maintained that chunky look, that football padding type of look. So Michael also added a lot of layering onto the concept as well, so that you could, as I mentioned earlier on the tech, you could see where parts intertwine with each other and interact with each other. And so that was something interesting that Michael brought to the table, and I thought was something that the old concept or the old asset didn't have, but was a welcoming a detail that Michael put in there. So you'll see a lot of moving parts. There's a frame that the armor sits on top of a certain frame, and you can see that in the concept and also soon in the game.
One of my favorite artists that I really look up to, he said when he was redesigning characters that you either have to look at it one or two ways. You can either completely throw the thing aside and say, this is going to be something completely new, and we'll just start over and say, this is the new thing. Or you can look at the old one and kind of use it as a reference point and kind of tangent off that and redesign it from there. And that's the way we're going to go. We want to keep those in mind, and we're going to redesign from there.
The ability for players to create unique armor sets will not only let them define their personal character and gameplay style, it'll also go a long way for making the universe look interesting and much more diverse.
And that's all for today's show. A big thanks to our subscribers. Don't forget that October's issue of Jump Point will be released on Friday, so be sure to check it out.
And of course, thanks to all of our backers for your support, but be sure to tune in tomorrow at 9 a.m. PST to catch Happy Hour. The community team will answer your questions, discuss CitizenCon, and much, much more. Then on Sunday at 2 p.m., the community team and devs will be at TwitchCon,
Yay.
hosting a panel called How Great Communities Make Great Games.
Finally, if you won't be in Frankfurt for CitizenCon, you can still enjoy the show with fellow Star Citizen fans, thanks to 2 large backer-run events going on that weekend. VerseCon in Austin, Texas, and Pariverse in Paris, France.
There are also a number of bar citizens planned in the days around CitizenCon. Stick around after the show for the list of these events, or visit the Bar Citizen website to find the event closest to you. You can also find further information on any of these events by clicking the link below in this video's description.
And until next week, we will see you
around the verse.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.